the meeting, I did want to take a minute to acknowledge Deb. I think you all have an understanding there's a lot of moving parts associated with Partner4Work. I'm guessing that none of us know where all the trains are, but we have programs, we have fundraising, we have compliance issues. We have no office because we have no lights in our office, and we probably are sitting at a point in time when employers, the people we serve, are more in need of workers than ever in the history of at least my life. So Deb stepped in for the second time, I might add, and really took the reins and worked closely with Jen and the rest of the gang to keep the trains moving on time. And I'm not sure that any of us appreciate the depth of information that you have to be able to keep this train moving, and to do it as a favor was something we really appreciate, Deb. So I wanted to acknowledge however you electronically chat, clap, everybody. I know we can do it on this thing, so everybody should do that for Deb. But thank you very much for your efforts, Deb.
Well, thank you, David. And as you just said, I mean, it was my pleasure and honor to do it. I was really very happy to step in for a short period of time. It's just a fantastic team at Partner4Work, and I really need to acknowledge Jen and Susie and Kristen, for whom this wouldn't happen without their strong leadership. And also David, who really every week got on the phone with me at 7:30 Friday morning to give his great advice and counsel. So just want to thank everybody, and very happy to have handed this off to our new terrific, great leader, Rob Cherry. So thanks again.
My role is minor. As a matter of fact, I'm such a moron. I actually got on at 7:30 again today, and nobody got on with me. So I did have a really good meeting with myself. There was no disagreements. Everything I voted on, I got. It was perfect. So thanks, Deb. I don't know if everyone's met Rob yet. I think we all know his past, so I won't go through that. I can tell you that the search team, or the selection team that reviewed the various candidates, really got highly engaged. As you know, we had 50 applicants that were looking for this position, and the team met and whittled it down to 6 or 8. We got into the final stages, and we were really down to 2 great candidates, and Rob rose to the top in large measure because I think the staff, after meeting him, highly endorsed Rob. Not that they didn't like the other finalists, but thought Rob was really the right candidate. So we're delighted to have him. I can tell you that I've had a chance to take him around town a little bit and introduce him to some people. He's by the way, already on a panel for the Pennsylvania Labor 100. He's a feature panelist. He's only been here like a week and a half, and he's already going to be in the Business Times. It'd be a big shot, which we expect from him. But more importantly, I think you should all know that I've introduced him to labor leaders, business leaders, political leaders, and without exception, he's able to just sit right down with them toe to toe. Conversations are pleasant, but impactful and meaningful. His depth is significant. He understands policy. He understands the need for what we do and why it's so important to everybody. And he's able to relate to the problems that each of the various constituents, at least so far that I've introduced him to, have concerns on their table. He's able to relate to that. So I think you should feel comfortable that he's somebody you can, take anywhere, put him in front of anybody, and he's going to be able to represent us well. So I don't really want to go too much further about welcoming Rob. I would like to tell him to get to work. We're tired of welcoming parties. There'll be no more handshaking, but roll your sleeves up. We need you badly and quickly. So unless anybody wants to say anything nice about Rob or welcome him, we're going to move on to our agenda. Anybody? No. Rob, welcome. Last time. Okay, let's move to the consent agenda. I'm not going to read all this only because the executive committee, we went through each item. It's on the record that we went through each one of these grants and these approvals. So everyone has the consent agenda? Did anyone have any item they wanted to pull off the agenda? And hearing none, we'll let that stand. I think I have Did I do the minutes? Yeah, okay. All right, and I think I'm turning the meeting over to Steve, who's not here. So Kristen's going to give us a financial report, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see the dashboard report.
Oh, by the way, before we go, Quentin and Jeff abstained from the consent agenda because they're both receiving some grants. Sorry.
Pardon me, Kristen. Chairman Malone, just for the record, we do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Okay, Kristen.
Okay, thank you. So we are reviewing the June 30th, 2021 preliminary financials. And I will say with this year, with COVID, we did have a really good finish to our year. We have expenditures a little over $25 million, which is about $1 million above prior year. So we're going to dive in here to our cash flow. And our cash remains consistent at about $5.6 million. However, I will point out, if you see in the chart here, that our unrestricted funds have definitely shrunk. The primary reason for this is that we did spend upfront money for our leasehold improvements and cubicles for the new space. However, over time, we will be able to recollect those funds through depreciation of management in general, but it will take some time to recollect that. Moving down to our accounts receivable. Our accounts receivable right now sits at about $7.5 million. You can see that the lion's share of this is around 94%. The lion's share is less than 30 days collectible. We only have a. I'm sorry. Did someone say something? No. So the over 90 days is only at 2%, and we are working at collecting this over 90 days. The city of Pittsburgh and PA CareerLink, we did collect already as of now. And Rob and I are working with the Employ Milwaukee. I think over in the upcoming week, we're going to be meeting with them to really tack down on getting this collected. And I know in the past, we did have the Bacini pull-in group AR out there that was over 90 days. And I will say we removed that from our AR because we did receive the funds from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it kind of just shifted where the money came from, and we were able to remove that from our books. Our line of credit remains at zero. We do have some prepaid expenses and prepaid insurance on our books at the end of the year. We have a security deposit of around $6,000. And our fixed assets net of depreciation sits at about $160,000. And that's definitely bumped up with the new cubes and leasehold improvements that we did for the space on 24. Liabilities, our accounts payable sits at around $4.4 million. And of that, 4.2 of it are due to subrecipients. We have about $1,000 in unclaimed property that we will be submitting to the state next December. We have some accrued vacation.
That's mine, Kristen. That $1,000's mine.
Sure, Steve. It is not. And then for the AR, we did do a little cleanup on the AR, and in talking to the auditors, we decided to put it under a liability. It's around $129,000, and we're going to let that sit there for about another year or two. And this was stuff that was cleaned up from 17, 18 on our receivables. And if, eventually we can recognize it to our bottom line once they're comfortable that no one's coming back for that money. Our net income is around $300,000, and this is primarily related to the release of the BNY operating funds that helped us pay for our cubicles and leasehold improvements, and also some temp restricted funds that we received in the door. Does anyone have questions on the asset, liability, and equity section of our balance sheet? Okay, I'm going to move down to the expense section. I'm going to shrink this a little so we can look at these two graphs together. Okay. So as I mentioned, our total expenditures for the year are around $25 million. Of that, 13% of that is our federal national Dislocated Worker Fund, and that's this green section here. And if you look down here on the bar graph, we are around $700,000 below prior year. And the reason for that is this program ended March 31st. So we were short this year a full quarter of expenditures. The program did have a slow start, however, had a very strong finish. We had about $400,000 unspent of an $8 million grant. And of that $300,000 was out to providers that they did not spend. Next is our WIOA grants in purple and teal here, and that makes up about 30% of our expenditures. And coming down to the bar chart here, we are around combined $1.7 million above prior year. The program reports that both Title I providers are ahead of this time last year. We definitely are investing more heavily in new industry recognized training opportunities to help people prepare for work when they are ready to come back. Also leading to the higher expenditures this year versus last year was the pandemic at the end of last year, the last quarter. The expenditures were very slow. We did not see a similar pattern this year. And then also with the National Dislocator Worker grant that ended in March, we were able to filter some additional funds to the WIOA Dislocated Worker. TANF makes up about 25% of our expenditures in this orange color. And down here, we are around $500,000 higher than prior year. We do have referrals coming in from the Accounting Assistance Office. They are down, but they are coming in, and our placement outcomes have improved. And I know also COVID also affected last quarter spending of last year, which also kind of gave us a little bump up this year. And the last program I'll talk about is the Learn and Earn, which makes up about 14% of our expenditures coming in this rust color. And you can see year to year, Learn and Earn is pretty consistent. For the summer of 2021, we had more than 1,450 eligible youth applications, and we had 55 corporate placements. We were granted a grant from DHS Allegheny County for $500,000, which helped cover the funding gap for the summer of 2021. And I know that the program team is working hard to create a cohesive business plan for next summer of 2022. And I think that they did a really great job at filling the funding gap this year, so we were able to have a complete program. Are there any questions on the expense section? So the last thing I'll mention is that we are starting to dive into our audit season. And like I said, these are preliminary until the audit comes out, and those will be the final numbers that we'll get to review. The auditors are starting their monitoring this upcoming week, so September 20th. And we do anticipate a smooth audit this year. I don't anticipate any problems. So thank you.
Any questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. Obviously, our financials are not for the faint-hearted, so we appreciate you keeping everything in order for us. It's great. Jen, you're going to, can you walk through the staffing changes that have occurred over the past couple of months and sort of a high-level org chart for us, please?
Sure. So included in your board book was a current high-level org chart. There's been significant changes at Partner4Work over the last few months. We've not been immune to some turnover through our staff, and many individuals have moved on to better and brighter things. So I thought it was important that folks see the current structure of the organization, where certain departments fall within the leadership team, and also provide a list of our current staff and contact information. For most of you, you've not seen that list since orientation, however many years ago. So that's a current list, particularly for our providers. If you have questions or concerns, you know who to reach out to. I'll tell you that while we have had some turnover, we don't think it's symptomatic of any problem at Partner4Work. It's just that the world has reopened, and we've had many individuals go on to partner organizations or even national stages. So it's a testament to the true talent that we have here, and the fact that people are able to kind of spread their wings and grow and cut their teeth at Partner4Work and move on to better and brighter things. So at any given time, we have approximately 2 to 3 job postings. Currently, we're looking for a communications manager, a compliance specialist, and a youth programs coordinator. So as always, we would appreciate your referrals and we will take them very, very seriously. So please feel free to share those with me. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the org chart, the staffing list, or anything regarding the transition and turnover we've had this year. So I'll stop there.
You know, Jen, I think it's probably a good thing that we have turnover. You know, if we can continue to have spread the people that we have positive connections with throughout this workforce area, which, at least in my view, is a pretty small world. There's only a handful of people, you know, throughout the country that know what's going on in this world. It's good. If they stay in this industry, it's good for us. So we shouldn't be discouraged by that.
Hear, hear.
All right. Any questions for Jen on new changes within the organization? If not, we'll turn to Susie. Susie, give us an idea how we're doing.
All right, hearing no questions from Jen, I'll jump in. I'm going to lull you to sleep a little bit with some program outcomes. So take a sip of your coffee, but then we'll re-energize with some discussion about why people are doing what they're doing and some behavioral economic stuff. So I'm going to share my screen here. So these are our WIOA performance outcomes for last program year, but I want to call your attention here to this chart up in the upper right-hand corner. WIOA performance outcomes are something that are incredibly confusing in terms of when outcomes are hitting and what is happening in terms of a holistic program look. So bear with me for just a second, because we have 6 different program outcomes that go across all of our programs, and all of our programs being WIOA Title I Adult, WIOA Title I Dislocated Worker, and WIOA Title I Youth. We also have Allegheny County performance measures and City of Pittsburgh performance measures, and they're all measured at different time periods. So we look at second quarter after exit employment. So 2 quarters after someone exits from the program, how are they doing? Are they employed? And what is their median wage? For youth programs only, second quarter after exit placement also includes placement in post-secondary education. We also look at 4th quarter after exit employment or placement for youth in education. We look at credential attainment. This one also gets very, very sticky because for young adults, a credential counts for a full year after they have exited from the program. And then we look at measurable skill gains, which is our only program measure that is done in the program year. Everything else has a different time period. And so what you'll note is that while measurable skill gain really looks at the time period of July 1 of 2020 through June 30th of 2021, everyone else, we're just getting these program outcomes on things that happened well over a year ago sometimes. So these program outcomes just came to pass and just came through our inboxes in the past month. And you'll note that this is the first year of program outcomes where COVID is playing a demonstrable impact or a demonstrable part in what our outcomes look like. So again, this gets really, really confusing. So please stop me if there's something that I'm not explaining fully. But you see on this Allegheny County measure, we have adult here, we have dislocated worker, and we have youth. And every one of those programs is measured on their average program score. This average program score is not that we got 114% of possible outcomes, right? They look at our negotiated goal. So our negotiated goal is to get 77% of adults in Allegheny County employed in their second quarter after exit. And then they look at our actual performance, which was 67% this year, in large part due to COVID. And they take the percentage of our goal achieved by that actual goal. And then they take the average of those percentage of the goals achieved. So it's an average of a percentage to get to this average program score here at the bottom. So the good news is we passed all of those, right? The bad news is the other thing that they look at is they look at across all of our programs. So all of our adult, our dislocated worker, and our youth programs, what is the average indicator score? So for second quarter after exit for the city of Pittsburgh, we did not achieve 90% of our average indicator score. Now, these numbers are not final. What the state is going to do now is look at a statistical model to identify who it is we served during these numbers, what the labor market looked like with these numbers, and they will readjust our performance outcomes retroactively. Okay, so that is still coming. But the other really important thing to note here in all of these numbers is that 40% of local workforce development boards within the Commonwealth missed a performance outcome during this time period. So COVID tanked performance measures across the Commonwealth, across the United States, of course, as well. But what we don't know yet is the Department of Labor at the federal level and the State Department of Labor and Industry have said that there will not be any waivers of WIOA performance. So that means we still have to meet outcomes for next year, and we still need to do what we can for anyone who has exited in the past year to get into second and fourth quarter after exit performance. And so what we're looking to do right now to make sure that these numbers increase next year is we're working with our Title I providers at PA CareerLink, so Grant and Dynamic, to share with them, these are your individuals who will be hitting performance in these quarters. You need to circle back with them and make sure that they're working and make sure that they have the supports that they need in order to be successful. We're working with our youth providers to look at what retention supports can we put in place to ensure that when young people start working or start going to post-secondary education, that they have better supports in place to be able to retain that job. So we do think that a lot of these performance outcomes are attributable to COVID and attributable to the labor market cratering back in March in particular. But we also know that there's always something that we can do to continuously improve. So this is inspiring our team to implement some more data tracking and some more reporting back to our providers who will hit these outcomes to make sure that we're going to hit them in the next year. The other thing we're looking at now, and hopefully by our next board meeting, I'll have an update for you on this, is taking a deeper dive into what populations are hitting these measures. And are we more successful with job seekers with certain attributes? Are we more successful or less successful serving single parents? If so, what interventions do we need to put into place to make sure that we can improve those outcomes? Are we more successful or less successful serving individuals who have a criminal background? Depending on what that tells us, we'll start to look at, are there things that we need to shift? So more to come on this, but we wanted to make sure that you were informed as board members of what our WIOA performance levels look like last year and what we are putting in place for this year to help to mitigate some of these challenges. Before I move on from lots of data, any questions on this?
I actually do. Does anybody else have any questions? I have one. First of all, this is fascinating. It reminds me a lot of whenever I play golf against Will Allen. If I keep score, I always win. If he keeps score, he wins. I don't know what that tells us, but more importantly, I guess I don't want to spend too much time because I think I know the answer, but why do we separate the scoring between the city and the county? I understand that in '99, when the legislation were passed, they were two separate workforce investment areas, and maybe that just carried over. But is the data telling us some things that are important to us? In other words, could you tell us if there's a correlation between the unemployment rate and zip code? Are we highly concentrated in our underserved neighborhoods with bad performance? That's what I'm trying to get to.
So the first part of your question, we have two different local areas, so we have two different performance.
But we did merge
levels.
them. We merged them legally, so I don't know why we still have. But anyways, that's government. So let's move on from that one. But go ahead.
We merged the board, but not the local areas.
Okay.
So those are kept separate, and the funding is kept separate.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So one thing that we still do need to do is dig into is this a provider level issue? Is it a zip code level issue? What's happening? We don't know yet exactly why these numbers are, I mean, we know globally why the numbers are lower than they were, but we don't know if there are specific population related issues or a provider or a zip code or anything along those lines. So more to come on that.
Okay. And did we create the disparity with our program in the youth section? We're under our comps lower than we expected. We paid less. We were probably a big part of that, right? The youth employment with our program, the 1,500 kids we hired.
No, because
No, that
Learn and
doesn't
Earn
count.
doesn't count as an outcome
Okay.
because it's subsidized employment.
Okay. Any other questions for Susie on the data?
I don't have a question, but I just think it's worth noting a comment across, as this is workforce development, but across all social services, this is a direct result of the pandemic. And like you can in many ways spend a lot of time trying to analyze the data. I think the other point to be made is like, we're not out of the pandemic. Some people think we've bent a corner. I like to use the expression, we're somewhere in the arc, and depending on who you talk with, that arc is still is different. So, that's a factor that is beyond our control. And so, again, it's just an observation.
That's
Thanks,
a
Dave.
really quick question, Mr. Chair. Susie, first of all, thank you. That was a spectacular and spectacularly clear presentation. So thank you for that. Do we need to be worried about or planning for any financial penalties from the feds or others with respect to an inability to meet measures under these circumstances that are COVID related? Could you I know that's an impossible question to answer accurately, but could you just sort of give us your handicapping about whether we should be doing any planning on that issue?
Sure. The short answer is not yet, right? For missing a measure one time, there's no penalty. If a measure is missed, the same measure is missed 2 years in a row in the same local area, then there could be a penalty, but we don't anticipate that happening. Realistically, usually there's one board a year that misses a measure. To have 40% of your local areas missing measures in a year is a pretty significant increase there. And so just, for historical purposes, we have never missed a measure since I've been at Partner4Work in 8 years. So, we've kind of skirted that line and come close, and every year the state negotiates these measures and negotiates them upward, right? Because they want to see continuous improvement. So that's part of this too, is that we're kind of catching up at higher negotiated levels that were negotiated 2 years ago. So well before the pandemic, well before these people were even enrolled into programming. So there's a lot of factors here, and we shouldn't see any financial penalty this year.
Hey, Susie, of the 60 who did meet goals, is there anything we could learn about what they're doing that's different than us, or is it too soon to tell?
We can definitely look. There are a lot of differences in local areas in the Commonwealth. So we are most comparable to South Central Pennsylvania, that has York in its local area, but it also has a lot of very rural areas. Philadelphia is a completely different area in a lot of different ways. And then you have a lot of other local areas that are very, very rural, or that are very large geographically in a way that we aren't, and have different challenges. So we'll definitely touch base with, Rob has his first meeting as a Pennsylvania Workforce Development Association board member on Monday, and I expect that this will be a topic of conversation there.
Good.
David, this is Quentin. Just one observation. The second quarter is right in the midst of when everything was closed down. So I'm not sure how we captured that information, but the succeeding quarters show a rebound. So I'm sure that there would be some consideration with the government that will account for that period, because everything was shut down. And if it's indicated that they were not employed, that's probably true, but it was probably out of their control in order to be employed at that time.
Yeah. There's a lot of sort of irrelevant numbers too. There was people that remained controlled because they got PPP money that really weren't working. Could be, I don't know. Hopefully they'll, I think it's wise that they continue not to take their foot off the accelerator. I mean, we're obviously in desperate times, but as long as they don't quit the funding, if we get a C-, I'm okay with that. I got a lot of them in my life. Susie, what else do you want to tell us?
So any other questions on this? Feel free to email me or give me a call. Aaron, I saw you unmute a couple times, so I'm happy to touch base on additional questions that you might have offline too.
Thank you.
The next slide that I have, at our last board meeting, we talked a little bit, actually a lot, about what was keeping people out of the workforce and what were we seeing in terms of hesitancy to come back. And we've done a lot of digging since then. We've had some focus groups. We have talked to job seekers. We have done some research as well to identify what factors are driving some of what we're seeing in the labor market. I'm not sure if folks on the board saw the Washington Post article from a few weeks ago that looked clearly, and we saw this over the summer as well, not to steal some of Debbie's talking points in a few minutes, but that looked at states that ended the federal unemployment benefits early and states that kept them until the September deadline, and what happened in the labor markets in those states. And what we saw, or what the Washington Post found, was that it really didn't affect overall employment to end those unemployment compensation extended benefits early. What ended up happening is that older workers, and by older workers, I just mean people 25 and older, they stayed out of the labor market because most often they were eligible for extended unemployment compensation benefits and did not go back in. What that created was a vacuum where teen workers could go into the labor market and the teen workers could pick up those jobs. And I think I said at the beginning of that sentence that was states that ended early. That was incorrect. That was states that kept those benefits longer, like Pennsylvania. So we saw more older workers staying out of the workforce and more teen workers this summer who were able to pick up jobs that were previously held by people who were closer to the prime of their careers. So we've done some research and talked to a lot of job seekers about what is keeping them out of the labor market right now and what they are looking for in terms of employment. And one phrase that has come up again and again and again, and I think this is a really interesting moment to be in workforce development, is that everyone is talking about job quality. So job seekers are talking about job quality, businesses are talking about job quality, and think tanks are talking about job quality. And when we're looking at job quality, wages are definitely a part of that. And we have seen over the past few months in particular, a stronger push towards $15 an hour as a minimum wage. We know that many of our partners have announced higher minimum wages, including Sheets, AHN, PNC Bank is at $18 an hour right now for their minimum wage, I believe. So we've seen that increase in wages. But wages alone are not enough to drive people into the labor market. Certainly their supports need to be there. And we heard from a lot of parents in particular that they were waiting for school to go back in session. So they had a more consistent and stable source of childcare for their school-age children. But what we hear again and again and again from job seekers is stability is really important in their jobs. And what that ends up meaning means different things in different industries, but where it has really reared its head this past few months is in accommodation and food service and retail, where those jobs tend to be jobs where pre-pandemic hours were not consistent. And so one week someone might work 15 or 20 hours, the next week they might be working 40 hours. And that's a really difficult area to plan for, especially if you have small children at home. And it's really difficult to set a monthly household budget when you might be getting 15 hours of work one week and 40 the next. So we know that that is happening here locally, where people are kind of holding back to wait to be able to find jobs that have a more consistent schedule and a larger amount of stability in their lives. We also have seen that with the increases in cases, that we're starting to see some people start to pull back a little bit from wanting those in-person jobs again. We anticipate that this is going to be an enormous kind of wave of, we're going to have to prepare for lots of different possibilities, but that we'll start to see kind of people pushing back into the labor force slowly but surely, and then some maybe coming back out as cases increase. So the PA CareerLink staff are in person at both the downtown and east locations, and those are open to the public. But we're also working with PA CareerLink staff members to go out into organizations throughout Allegheny County to provide services closer to where people are, and to work more closely with employers that are close to home for some of those job seekers, so that we can start to make those connections a little bit better for individuals who aren't coming into our CareerLink locations. And that work is done in large part thanks to the support of Allegheny County DHS. So I definitely want to call forward Erin's leadership on that, and with the support of a lot of different neighborhood organizations to be able to expand the reach of our current one-stop system. Any questions on this?
This is fascinating. Not surprising, but fascinating. Susie, I think that your comments about food service are accurate. That industry, I think there was a lot of trust that just eroded. But I think Ike and others will tell you that's now going up the chain too. It's not just food service. And you know, even as we look at this money being released for infrastructure, I don't have any idea how we could possibly find enough people to do this work. People just don't. I don't know. There's more to this than just that. I think that's a big part of it, what you said, but there's a lot more. Is there anyone that figured out how to make food service or the service industry welcoming? Because the owners of those businesses tell me that increasing compensation doesn't move the needle. Is there anybody came up with anything helpful for them? Because they're desperate, and I really want some food.
We have some best practices and are working to pull together a group of accommodation and food service employers. Through the Aspen Institute, we have a project on job quality that hit at the right time. So we're developing a toolkit that should be done this month to share with employers about, you know, there's a restaurant in Baltimore that hasn't been able to raise wages or provide benefits, but they provide kind of non-traditional benefits. And by that, they mean that anytime an employee needs to catch an Uber to work, the restaurant pays for it. And employees can do that as many times as they want to, or they need to, right? So it's thinking outside of the box from, you know, and really asking their employees, what do you need in order to be able to be successful and thrive here? It's providing financial services education at that restaurant and stock options in some cases, and really just pushing forward in terms of flexibility and in terms of listening to worker voice and supporting them where they can be.
Are we talking to Big Burrito or Parkhurst about any ideas or sharing?
So on that note, we did do a grant. We had a grant from the Aspen Institute for Reimagining Retail with Maureen Conway's group, Susie, and it was with Eaton Park, with Jeff's group and Robert Morris, to develop a curriculum for customer service, but also for management. And so things like the predictable schedules and wraparound services needed for childcare and things like that. And Walmart paid for it. It's like a $5 million grant in 5 cities, and then to collect these best practices. And I think they were folded into the program that you're now involved in, Susie. So there is a pretty large body of work for this that we could draw from, and, you know, maybe look at pulling together some of these larger food service and other retail chains here. You know, maybe even with Laura, with Giant Eagle and Jeff and Big Burrito, and see about looking to share these best practices with them and get their input.
That would be great.
Good boy.
Dave Copeland.
Anything
Just wanted
else?
to, yeah, I just wanted to note to sort of piggyback Linda's point just now, like, again, we see locally, the Pulse report that United Way, Allies for Children and Poise Foundation do talk excessively about the loss of childcare slots in the region. And as a nonprofit, like when we go to hire people for our summer camp, and those jobs are 6-7 weeks, and then after 40 hours a week, but then after school, when you think about the labor market pressures, if we can't find people for our jobs where kids would go, then a parent who might work in the food service industry, they're not going to work if they don't have a place for their kid. And like just the nonprofit sector as a whole employs about 10% of all people in this country. So worth noting that these pressures are as a confluence of factors that build to it, from childcare, out of school time opportunities, transportation, et cetera.
Yep. Okay, anything else, Susie?
Yes. So all of this kind of builds to a much broader conversation, a much broader opportunity that I just want to start to kind of get your brains swirling on right now. So the Biden administration has released a significant amount of funding through the EDA, some of which is focused on economic development and other is focused on workforce development. And a large workforce development proposal is the Good Jobs Challenge. So we met this week, Rob and I, with our counterparts in Tri-County Workforce Area, Westmoreland, Fayette, and South West Corner, to talk about a regional approach to the Good Jobs Challenge, which is a $25 million opportunity to build a workforce system and advance a workforce system with a lead agency and intermediary organizations in specific industry partnerships. So this is really a ripe opportunity for Partner4Work and a ripe opportunity for Southwestern Pennsylvania. We have done a lot of work under Earl's leadership in the past few years to build out structures that make us really ready, and I think a great fit for the Good Jobs Challenge. So more to come on this, but just so that you are aware, we are starting to pull together conversations around what does a regional training system look like? How do we start with employers and have employers tell us, here's what we want to train for, and here's how we need to connect people in with jobs. How do we build out what we currently have and look at ways of advancing the workforce development system overall within this region? And so thinking about things like the work that Carrie and Literacy Pittsburgh have been able to start to build, and how do we pull that into something like this? Dr. Bullock and the other community colleges, the supportive services and the work that we've started with DHS over the past year, all of those things we think set us up for a great Good Jobs Challenge ask. And we just need to kind of start to pull together these pieces. The real benefit of this, or one of the real nice parts of this ask, is that we have time to pull this together. The proposal is not due until the end of January. So right now we're kind of getting our ducks in a row with our regional boards, and we'll be talking and reaching out to several of you over the next few months to identify how do we put together a cohesive ask here for Southwestern Pennsylvania that is aligned with our economic development goals in the region, and that really helps people advance along their career pathways and infuses some resources into the system for things like outreach and professional development of workforce development staff and system coordination, and some additional programming, of course, for job seekers who need the help.
Nancy?
I think it's so wonderful that we are working with so many important partners. How do we see ourselves working with the new city administration? Ideally.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the timing of the grant is due in January of next year. And so We would love to work with any administration, no matter who that is, right? And Rob has met with several members of the team, both the current city administration and Representative Gainey. So all of this will have to be driven by our chief local elected officials at the county and city level, as well as the local elected officials of those other 9 counties.
Susie, could I understand that structure of this EDA? The EDA grant has a separate section for the Good Jobs Challenge, or would it be that some entity would apply for the EDA money and some of it would be allocated to the Good Jobs Challenge? I want to understand that.
The Good Jobs Challenge is a separate opportunity from Build Back Better or some of the other EDA opportunities.
So others that are working on EDA money, would we be competing? Would we work, like the conference is working on something? Are we working closely with the conference on this, or would it be separate?
We're working with the conference. It's a separate ask.
Okay.
So there are 2 different pots of funds, and it's
Okay.
not competitive to go after both for the same region.
Okay, Linda, are you on that project too?
Yeah, and Quentin and Rob and Susie have been involved in our stakeholder meetings for the conference, the overall effort that we're leading on the economic development piece. So.
Okay, so as I understand it, the key decision maker is this former CMU guy, right?
Well, from Department of, or NSF or Department of Commerce, do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
important.
and I think both Farnham and Pat Gallagher, know him and former colleagues, yeah.
Right. So, I think, Susie, at least as I understand it, what's going to be most welcome is that if it's a comprehensive plan that would include business, labor, regional support. So, January is going to come pretty quick. So if you're going to, I know the conference will be convening some of those same stakeholders, but we ought to be convening them separately, I guess, on this part. Is that accurate?
So we've talked to the conference and they have agreed to share what they're learning and convening, and we are pulling together folks and convening them, hopefully not at the same time, right, in the same moment, but we're coordinating that to make sure that we're pulling people together now.
Okay. So is labor involved with your efforts, Linda?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. I think we should stay engaged with that, Susie. We being the board, whatever you want from us, we ought to know about.
Wonderful. We'll update you certainly at the December meeting with a more kind of comprehensive, clear plan, but wanted to just put this out here now for everyone to start to think about and reach out if you have questions.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, I will turn things over to Debbie to talk about Learn and Earn and governance.
Well, great. Thanks, Susie. And thanks for all your great leadership on all of this work. So moving on to Learn and Earn, we are very proud that Learn and Earn 2021 employed more than 1,400 young adults this summer, as you can see on the slide. And while our enrollment this summer was lower than in past years, teen employment strengthened overall in the county this summer. And so, that's all great news. We did hear from many young people who declined Learn and Earn positions that they were able to find jobs paying more money or got jobs that had more work hours on the open labor market. And so that'll be a continuing discussion that we'll have in terms of the question about the hourly wage rate for Learn and Earn at a future point. But more than 50 youth participated in the corporate Learn and Earn program, and that, I want to give great thanks to many of you who obviously supported the program and had interns there. And interns worked at ARCO, Allegheny Health Network, Allegheny County, the conference, City of Pittsburgh, CCAC, Literacy Pittsburgh, Macero, Pittsburgh Penguins, and UPMC, among others. So just want to thank everyone for their support of the corporate Learn and Earn program. And I also want to give many thanks, as always, to Aaron Dalton in the county and Majestic Lane in the city, and obviously all the board members who supported this program financially and with worksite placements this summer. So we'll have a full report. Obviously, it just, everything's just finished a short time ago. So we'll have a full report about the summer later this year that Susie will be presenting. So are there any questions about Learn and Earn? Okay, well, again, it was a great summer, again, having to deal with COVID. And again, I want to thank Susie and the team for all their great work on this. So if there aren't any questions about Learn and Earn, I will move on to governance. The governance committee met last week to begin conversations around recruitment, particularly from the private sector, and to begin work on some necessary revisions to the Partner4Work bylaws and the committee charters. And we're looking to establish 2 ad hoc committees of the board. The first is going to be a standalone personnel committee to advance best practices and personnel human resource policies. And the second is a reimagined communications committee established to oversee the coordination of efforts to share information and resources with job seekers and employers and funders and elected officials and stakeholders. We're always trying to make sure that people understand what Partner4Work is and try to continue to think about how to communicate that well. So we expect to have the charters finalized by the end of the year. And if you have interest, we'd love to see board members obviously engaged in this. So if you have interest in serving on either committee, please let Rob know, Jen know, or me know. And then lastly, with Rob's help, we're going to be crafting a short narrative style board satisfaction survey to be distributed by the end of the year. We'll discuss that in more detail in December, but really appreciate your cooperation and completion of that. It's been a couple of years since we've done it, and it again is a governance best practice to try to make sure that we have a good understanding of what the board is thinking about how we work as a board. So any questions on governance? Okay, if not, please send us, Jen or me, recommendations for any other nominations or appointment that you might have for consideration.
Hey, Deb, I think Gabby is in the queue to be.
Yes, she is in the queue.
Are we voting on that today? What's the process?
Jen, can you answer that?
We don't need a vote today. We're proceeding. She's in the queue. We're going to proceed with her official appointment.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I noticed in the chat room that Ike asked about a survey of unemployed to see what's keeping them out of the workplace. And Susie, do you want to answer that for everybody? That was kind of an interesting question.
Sure. So we did some research into this and Indeed did a much larger survey than we'd be able to do, and found that one of the prevailing reasons for a lack of job search urgency at this point was fears related to COVID, but also that they had either a financial cushion or a spouse who was employed. Childcare responsibilities were noted by 18% of respondents to the survey. And then this survey is from about a few months ago. So unemployment benefits accounted for 10% of people's lack of job search urgency. So that has likely changed since then, since the expiration of the federal extension of benefits. But certainly having some sort of financial cushion, and we have seen across the board that the Biden administration has invested a lot of money into programs that have reduced overall poverty. And so that has enabled some people to stay out of the workplace in a place that they might not have otherwise been able to.
Yeah. And did you drill down on COVID fear, or did the survey drill down on COVID fears? Is it fear of going back to work where everybody's not vaccinated, or is it transportation, or what is it?
I'll dig into it and I'll find out.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure, Ike.
Can you hear me? Yeah, it's just taking that a step further. I like the idea of sort of exploring what kind of fears, but also what an employer could do to allay those fears. And another question, just flat out, what would attract you back into the workplace? You know, even if they have a cushion, you know, would higher wages do it? Would a safe workplace do it? Would childcare do it? You know, what is your primary need that would attract you back into the workplace? The other comment is we have, as my understanding, 315,000 people in Pennsylvania waiting for unemployment compensation determinations. And it seems to me that that's a pool of people who we ought to be looking at in the you know, whatever portion of that is in the Pittsburgh region, and seeing, you know, how they're doing and whether we can get them jobs.
Yeah. Are you going to tell us anything brilliant, Susie?
I have some other backup documentation for why people aren't, or what could entice people back into the labor force, but it's not fit for public consumption yet. So I will make sure that I send that out to all of you, or that Jen sends it out to all of you when it's in a more digestible format.
And have we, if it's helpful to employees, do we have a way to communicate with them?
Yes.
We do.
Yep. We'll
What
share
would
it
we-
with our industry partnerships and disseminate things that way, and our business service teams at PA CareerLink.
If it's, you know, if it's something that everyone ought to know about, maybe we should go to the Business Times and see if we could have Susie be a featured author, or Rob, or some combination thereof. I think that would actually be helpful on a couple fronts.
Hey, Susie, understanding it's not ready for prime time, can you give us any insights? And I agree with Ike that's the question we ought to be asking. What will get you back?
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of broadest group of people are looking for a kind of a healthier work-life balance. That's about 25% of respondents, that we have a better benefits package, but I don't yet know kind of at the top of mind what a better benefits package means. So that's something that I want to do a little bit more digging into. And about 10% said sustained remote work opportunities. So more to come on that, but I will make sure to follow up on that.
Do you have any insights on that? I know you all are studying that every day, because it's a big problem for you.
Absolutely. Actually, I just spent some time in a couple of our hospitals, and sort of hearing the same thing. The work-life balance is part of it. It's about getting opportunities, and actually we're talking about, you know, even at the nursing level, how we, you know, you think that they have a good job, but they want to know how they continue to advance in their professions and in their careers. And so we actually was just writing myself a note to get with our educators and see what are we doing to actually help people move along the process, from entry level all the way up to the nurse practitioners, who I have administrators, project managers who want to move into operations positions. And are we doing a good enough job to make sure they know we care about how their career progresses? I don't think we are, frankly. And we need to figure it out and formalize it so there's actually a path for people. And I would say, especially at the entry level, I actually just sent a note, Susie, to my HR department, basically saying, all right, who's working with Susie? Because we have a lot of entry level jobs, and I know we have people assigned, but I want to know what they're doing about it. So it was a little nicer than that, but so that they may be in touch with you, because I think there's a lot more we could be doing, frankly.
You know how warm and fuzzy you are, Duke.
I am a warm and fuzzy person generally. Deb Kaplan, please don't say a word. But yeah, so I think there's a lot more we could be doing. Thanks for asking, David. And,
Okay.
We're going to do it.
Well, I know you're thoughtful about it. So Susie, lean on Duke too. Let's, and whatever we find at HN, let's share with UPMC, of course.
I just wanted
All
to
right.
point out, if I could, Dave, before we
Yeah,
move
sure.
on, there's a national study being released by Nonprofit HR on Tuesday, and the preliminary overview of that in the nonprofit sector says 95% of people surveyed will consider changing jobs, and 92% will consider changing industries. So back to the root of to find what they're looking for, which back to like everyone wants to know what is it they're looking for, right? And some of the top line answers to that are for professional positions at that level are flexibility and work environment, you know, and again, so as we all read about the great resignation, you know, and so forth, it's not just outright resignation. It's also like people really thinking about most changes that folks make. It's remarkable that Partner4Work at any one time only has 3 positions open. It's remarkable that the turnover hasn't been far more profound than many organizations in the nonprofit sector are seeing that in droves. So, and again, trying to figure out these factors, I mean, it's different for each person is another thing. So like surveys are great and they get us part of the way there, but there's a confluence of factors at this moment in time. It's
Yeah, I think we'll be studying this for years and we'll look back, but you know, this desire to be able to work remotely is something obviously employers are worried for. I'll give you something to underscore and then we got to move on. But the CEO of Mine Safety Appliance told me that at any given time, he would typically have 50 to 60 patents in process. Today he has 1 because his people are working remotely and are not collaborating. So all of us who look at career paths and helping young people move up the ladder and learn, mentoring, that goes away with remote. It's just not possible to do it the same way with remote. So, you know, there's a confluence coming here that's really scary when you look down the road. So it's not our job to fix it today, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. Okay, I think we have to move on because we're getting behind schedule and we have to hear from our now hardworking, no longer on the party circuit CEO. You're on, Rob.
Thank you. So just starting off, just as Dave said earlier, just want to thank Debbie. Debbie, Partner4Work owes you a debt of gratitude for your contributions to the organization. So thank you so much. And you all bear with me a second. Also, just want to give a huge thanks to Jen, Kristen, Susie. You've made this past month really easy for me and my family to transition here as smooth as possible. So I just want to, and you also, Dave, thank you so much for everything. You know, the transition has just been really easy because of you all. So thank you. So in addition to, you know, drinking from the fire hose, so to speak, the last 30 days, getting up to speed on programs, operations, fiscal, I have had the opportunity to be at some pretty exciting public facing events, BankWorks graduation, where I like to add that there was 100% placement in this cohort 6 of our BankWorks program. Also had the pleasure of speaking at a hospitality event with the mayor and county exec for a hospitality workforce celebration in the pop-up park just down the street here. And also, in addition to that, had some face-to-face time with Sheila Ireland, the Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development for the state, and attended a kind of meet and greet with Dave for mayoral candidate Ed Gainey, which will result in a subsequent meeting in the next 30 days. So in addition to that, we're beginning to put together a transition team and select a facilitator to, you know, take us through this process. And we're hoping that we'll have we should have a committee report out, a transition committee report out by mid-December is the goal. So, you know, along the same vein that we've all just been talking about, we've communicated to staff that we'll be returning to work in the office on October 4th. So the transition will be a hybrid model, 40% in the office, which equates to about 2 days to start off with. And then, you know, we'll keep track of numbers, things like that. But the plan is to then sometime in January, probably shift to 50%. So we've done town halls with staff and of course there are reservations about coming back into the office and we addressed that personally with them. But one thing that we were able to do is poll our staff on who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been vaccinated. And our numbers came back pretty positive that 95% of the folks that we have working here at Partner4Work have been vaccinated, which is good information that we can give to people, not specific information about any particular person, but we think that that'll make folks feel a lot better about returning to the office. And, you know, kind of along the same lines that we were talking about, that has a multiplier effect. You know, more people come down in this office. As Dave said, you know, and I expressed to staff, there is some creativity lost working virtually, but also, you know, the business that sells coffee two blocks down the way, he gets some more customers throughout the day also. So there is that multiplier effect of not just us coming back in and being able to talk to each other face to face, be creative with each other. But once we bring people back into the office, back downtown, those businesses down here also be able to survive.
Hey, Rob, what are you doing with the non-vaccinated? Are they going to remain remote, or what are the rules?
Right now, you know, our policy is that, you know, when you're in the office, you wear a mask. So we're not doing anything yet. There is, you know, I think it came down to 2 people, and there was an indication from one that they you know, just need a little more time. And then one person has no plan to be vaccinated. So, you know, we're coming up with a process where the person who does not want to be vaccinated, or even the person that doesn't want to be vaccinated at this time, we can come up with a, you know, weekly testing ritual that we can go through with those individuals. But at this time, you know, we haven't made a decision around that, you know, mandating at this point.
Okay.
So, you know, moving forward, you know, as much as possible, you know, I'll continue to be, you know, public facing, meeting with board members, influencers who have connection to this board, just to keep a pulse on what's happening regionally, and not just from an economic standpoint, but, you know, like Susie talked about with the Good Jobs Grant, also from a, you know, federal funding standpoint also. So, you know, in the last 18 months, it's just a real remarkable time to be in workforce development. We've seen record unemployment spikes, businesses closed that, you know, basically will never return in some situations, and companies have to pivot, not only just, you know, to keep workers healthy, but to keep operating. So in the past, you know, during times of economic uncertainty, you know, you turn on the news and you hear about, you know, consumer confidence. This is a time where, you know, both are affecting businesses, not only consumer confidence, but employee confidence and job quality, things like that. But it's also a time, unlike in the past, that we have the ear of businesses to really discuss job quality with them. And that's really exciting. So it's also an unprecedented time for workforce boards, because we're being asked to look at things in different ways that we haven't in the past. And we're definitely up for the challenge of that, you know, here at Partner4Work. So while WIOA will always be kind of the backbones of workforce development boards, there is a lot of space for research probably modeling both statistically and programmatically, and policy and advocacy now more than probably any other time I can remember in workforce development. So excited to be here, and I'll be meeting with all of you very soon, and that's my report, Dave.
That's great. Anybody have questions for Rob? Well, Rob, welcome aboard. The bar is high. We expect you to exceed it. Carrie, I think you have some report on Title II for us, please.
Absolutely. First, let me say, Rob, we're so excited. Literacy Pittsburgh, your friends over here are so excited you're here, and just looking forward to working with you. This is my annual Title II report to the board. Let me just, can everybody see my screen? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So this is part of WIOA. that we need to make a report every year about the Title II services being provided in the service area of the board. So just going to give you a quick reminder of who Literacy Pittsburgh is and what we do. We are the Title II provider for Allegheny and Beaver counties. What I'm going to share with you today is focused on Allegheny County. We also happen to be the largest Title II provider in the state of Pennsylvania. We say we're here for those left behind and those who just arrived, but those who never, ever give up. Those are the resilient, tenacious folks that study with Literacy Pittsburgh on their own volition. Nobody makes them come here, but they come to improve their skills. And you see these program buckets that we work in. Who we serve tends to be the low wage workforce, right? It is, this is these employment maps. I'm sure we've, graphs we've all been looking at. Our folks are the low wage workforce, many of whom are still out of the workforce, but many are getting back in. 64% of our students, people that study with us, are parents of school-age children. So as we've heard earlier in the conversation, they are often people who are out. They are struggling because of childcare and school responsibilities, but many of them are trying to grab onto this middle skills workforce, right? This turquoise line, and that's why they came to us in the first place. So that's where we are laser focused. When you think about what the need is in Allegheny County, give you some facts. About 54,000 working age adults don't have a high school diploma in Allegheny County. We think about, well, we know about 120,000 have low literacy skills, meaning they're going to struggle with written communication, interpreting it. And here's something interesting, about 202,000 working age adults in Allegheny County struggle with numeracy. So we end up teaching a lot of math here at Literacy Pittsburgh. Sometimes I think we should have named ourselves Math Pittsburgh. But a big part of what I want to share with you today is some of our outcomes for the last year. Similar to what Susie shared earlier, you know, these numbers really reflect pandemic. The 1920 numbers reflected the first, you know, the last quarter of that year was the pandemic, and then all of the last program year. So you can see how many students we served, and that number is down compared to previous years. You can see the breakdown between folks that are receiving college and career readiness service versus straight English language learning. That is not just, there are foreign-born adults in the college and career readiness bucket. It's just a matter of what they're studying with us. These folks would be more likely to be studying academic skills, getting themselves ready for, you know, placements exams at CCAC, the trades, apprenticeships, et cetera. One thing that kind of blew my mind this last year is this little graph over here, education upon entry. Anything strike anybody as unusual here? I'll tell you what it is that this is the first year that the largest group of our students have post-secondary degrees. What does that tell you? Usually the red bar here is those with less than a high school diploma. I think this really reflects two things. One is this was a year when we were almost all completely online. And so students that could study online tended to be better educated. And so that shifted our population. It also reflects sort of an intentional shift in some of the services we're delivering to attract that group to be able to quickly transition them into jobs. But the third thing it reflects, and I really want to ask this board to think about, is the fact that there's a lot of foreign-born adults here that have post-secondary degrees, are highly skilled, that come here to learn the language, but really are ready to work. So we can't forget about them as we think about how we're going to fill all these jobs.
How much of that 48% would that person you just described fit? Can you guess?
The highly skilled immigrants?
Yeah.
It's probably almost all of them.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
So how do we get access? I mean, how do our employers get access to them? I mean, how do they know they're there?
Well,
Maybe
they,
that's for Susie as much as you, Carrie. I'm sorry.
yeah, and I think, I mean, we are working with these folks all the time to reduce the friction between where they are now and where they want to be. And I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but it is really part of why we're trying to do some vertical integration here at Literacy Pittsburgh, so that we're not, you know, you learn your language here and then we try to patch you into some job training program. Is there a way we can, we're trying to build more programming so that folks can learn the language while they're in a job training program, if that makes any sense. So we have a couple examples and really wanting to build more things like that. So again, asking folks on this board to be thinking about how we could partner to help you get more people on the job, especially with this ready and able population.
I'm sorry, are these, now, are these people, do they have a post-secondary degree or just post-secondary experience?
They would
So have they taken some courses, or do they actually have a degree?
Some of them will have post-secondary degrees. Some of them will have post-secondary credentials. Most of these credentials and degrees will be from other countries.
I see.
So they have.
I will tell you, having visited classes for these people, it's not just that they obviously exhibit raw intelligence. They have a level of energy and excitement that employers are dying to find. So what I'm wondering, Carrie, if we could find a way to get some HR folks to help get their people into C, maybe encourage them to be volunteer too, because when you meet these people, you want to hire all of them. You're gonna take them all home.
Right.
It's a
Well,
very
we've
exciting class.
We've actually had some success with that in this past year. We did an immigrant, we've been doing an immigrant workforce program with JF and CS. The last couple cohorts have been focused on healthcare, and we've been bringing healthcare employers in, and they've been grabbing up grabbing up our students pretty quickly. But we'd like to do more things like that in the year ahead.
And we'd like to help you with that, Carrie. If there's some way we could help people meet your people in that environment, I think that would be valuable.
And I think one of the things we're talking to a couple healthcare providers about is being part of their onboarding program for foreign-born adults. Well, let me just stay here for a minute.
Do you interact with Duke? I know I don't know if he's still on.
Not Duke directly, no.
Let Duke know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. But just, doing some English language while people are becoming onboarded is one really important way that we can help. I want to share these outcomes. This again is data for our, I don't think I said it earlier, but the students we're serving this past year, and these outcomes are data for both Literacy Pittsburgh and Goodwill Industries of Southwestern Pennsylvania. That is our subcontracted partner. So these are the employment outcomes, post-secondary, high school equivalency, and educational level gains. Similar to what Susie showed, right? Like numbers aren't necessarily as good as we'd like, often for reasons way beyond our control, like huge job losses and GED testing not being open for part of the year. But also, you know, frankly, we struggled with educational level gains because online education is just not as effective as in person, right? The duration is shorter and it's much harder to deliver good content, especially when people are watching their kids in the background while they're trying to learn themselves. So we are back and starting to ramp up back in-person services here at Literacy Pittsburgh, and Goodwill is as well. Any questions about these outcomes before I go to the next? We are pleased to say that these post-secondary outcomes are getting better. This is sort of the true north for us, that the extent to which more of our students are transitioning to post-secondary, whether that be CCAC, the Builders Guild's pre-apprenticeship program or apprenticeship programs generally, this is really what most of our students want, and a number that we're trying to grow. So I'll just highlight again that our Ready and Relevant initiative is really about aligning our work for better career outcomes. A good way to think about it is that we will provide basic skill training at Literacy Pittsburgh, on a job training site, and at work. For example, last year we did English language classes for UPMC environmental service workers on site. And that directly translated into improved patient satisfaction scores at the hospitals that we worked in. We trained the 211 operators on how to do vaccine scheduling last year. So these are things that you wouldn't think about for Literacy Pittsburgh, but it's the kind of training that we can design on the fly and be very impactful for an employer. We've also done training at the casino, helping table games operators learn the language so that they could interact with players more effectively. Now, obviously that didn't happen in the last year, but it's the kind of work that we can do. We are working as part of the Builders Guild's pre-apprenticeship training program. As many of you know, we're teaching math for the trades. In the program, we're also teaching a brush-up class, math for the trades, standalone, that we're running all the time for people that are interested in a variety of different trades that they might not want a pre-apprenticeship. They might just be getting ready to take the apprenticeship exams. We're offering those classes at Literacy Pittsburgh. Right now we have programming with construction partners, with healthcare partners, and job training programs, and in a small role in the early childhood education pre-apprenticeship program. Those are all things that we'd like to grow. I have this photo of a student here just to give you an example. This is Liara. She enrolled with us to prepare for the nursing school entrance exam, but she's working with a tutor, right? So it isn't just in class, it isn't just at work, but it can be with a tutor. She's getting one-on-one help from a trained tutor that is helping her get ready for those exams while she is currently working as a CNA. And then the last two things I want to say is two of the things we're building into our programming currently are digital skills, right? Recognizing you can't even apply for a job right now without adequate digital skills. And so we built a whole digital skills program at Literacy Pittsburgh over the last year. And we are now, thanks to a labor and industry grant, able to teach standalone digital literacy classes. Our Title II funds don't allow us to do that, but we got additional funding to be able to do it. So we're teaching them here, but we're also teaching at CareerLink downtown, and we'll be teaching classes and holding open lab hours there every week for about 15 or 20 hours. The other thing we're doing is infusing more career services into our model that I think kind of gets to your question, Dave, is like, how do we sort of make sure employers and students are getting matched? This is not a capacity that we've always had, but recognized as part of our ready and relevant analysis that we needed to build it. So we have raised some additional resources to bring more career counseling services on site to help students explore what they want to do, plan for it, and build the skills to be able to pursue their different career goals. So we're lucky that we'll have some CareerLink partners on site to provide those services, as well as JF and CS is going to be on site, which they do a great job with our immigrant students.
So, Carrie, if they went on your website, could they find out, an employer could find out you have 26 kids that are, or 26 people that are qualified in this capacity, and speaking at whatever level?
Well, they're not going to get that specific data on our website, but they're going to get to a person that will get it for them, that will help them, find those students.
Okay. I don't think people know that, Carrie.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking it. Hopefully they do now. I guess that's why they want me to make this presentation every year.
Yes, it is.
By they, I mean the Department of Education.
I think Duke already hired Liara, if I'm saying the name right.
Yeah, she might already work for you, Duke. I think she's already a CNA.
If she doesn't, Carrie, just I'll give you my cell phone. We'll figure it out from there.
Fantastic. Right. This is what I said. We have loads of people that are trying to grab on to these middle skills jobs, and we have scale. What we don't have is integration, and that's what we've been trying to work on for the last 2 years, and lots of good partnership opportunities here on the Partner4Work board. I'll just close with a quick, some of the enhancements we've made during COVID. We just took the opportunity to work on the business while we were going through this. So while we were doing online and in-person classes and tutoring, we built a trade up program with the Builders Guild. So now not only are we teaching math in their program, but we're running a program that includes, you can get the GED and the pre-apprenticeship at the same time. So basically you come out with your GED, the pre-apprenticeship certificate, and a job. We're pretty excited about that. We've just started that program. Like I said earlier, we've built this digital literacy program, and we've been able to lend technology, lend with air quotes, to hundreds of students this year so that they could continue to learn. And then we've expanded our staffing to meet what we see as going to be an increased need for our services. That's all I have. Anybody has any questions?
Any questions for Carrie?
Yeah.
We're almost out of time.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe it's not just for Carrie. Do we, and forgive my ignorance on this, do we share, I mean, you got a literacy program that also seems to be job placement and a lot of other things. Do all the vendors refer, share, and use each other's services as needed, or has everybody sort of got their own literacy program, their own job placement program? Their, you know, how is that working now? And, you know, is that the best way to do it, whatever's being done now? I'm just kind of curious as I hear this report on literacy, that it would seem that it's something everybody runs into.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Maybe Susie or somebody wants to jump in. I mean, we're a title partner, and so we're part of the partner meetings. We work closely with the other title partners to coordinate and collaborate services, and we do work to co-enroll people to the extent possible when it makes good sense. I'd love to be more in a situation where people don't have to figure out their own adult basic ed programs. And by people, I mean either employers or job training programs, right? That they're using our services and we're pushing in to provide that. And I'd love to be in a situation where I also don't have to have my own career services, you know, that is pushed in. I think that, you know, the challenge is really wanting it to be student or job seeker centered so that we're minimizing how much friction there is in terms of referrals and sending people 14 different places to get what they need in order to find that next move. And that's all the work that I think we're engaged with together.
Susie, any thoughts?
Yeah, just to provide a little bit of clarity on what Carrie means by title partner, because I think that sometimes that's not totally clear for folks. There are 4 core title programs under WIOA. Adult and dislocated worker and youth is Title I, and that's the funding that Partner4Work oversees for our 2 local areas. Those services tend to be very deep, right? We do a lot of job training, we do a lot of case management, we do a lot of connecting with employers, but we serve fewer participants than what is served out of, I'm going to skip over Title II for a second, Carrie, what is served out of Title III, which is Wagner-Peiser. That's the kind of open door career link online, also in the centers administered by Frank Stasko and his staff. That's the state programming called Wagner-Peiser. It's a lighter touch often than Title I services are, but it's a broader reach for job seekers. Title II are adult basic education programs, and Partner4Work leans really heavily on Literacy Pittsburgh and Goodwill to provide all adult basic education services that we refer people to. Carrie and her team responded to a procurement for providing Title II services or adult basic education services in the Earn Centers, for instance. And so are working there with Earn Center clients in order to get them that basic education. And then Title IV of WIOA is OVR, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, which Marcy Katona on our board oversees here locally. One of the big challenges that we face, in addition to lots of cooks in the kitchen, right, is that there is a centralized data system for Title I, our programming, and Title III, Wagner-Peiser, Frank Stasko's programming. Title IV also goes in there, but we can't see any data that Title IV puts in because of privacy issues related to individuals with disability. And Title II has a completely separate system, if you have one at all. I don't know, Carrie. But so those job seekers have to prove eligibility for us and then prove it for Carrie too, if she needs it for her services. So there is a push at the federal level on co-case management. There is a draft regulation that's out that we submitted some comments on at Partner4Work for how do we at the data system level get better at serving people so they don't have to knock on every single door and prove themselves eligible every single time.
Never ceases to amaze me how difficult our legislators make our job. Thanks for that summary, Susie. Any other questions for Carrie? I know we're a little bit over time.
Yeah, let me just ask a question that doesn't need an answer right now, but do we track how many referrals or joint management of people? That would be a start if you don't, to kind of getting a handle on it. You know, and if we have the reason that it's funding, you know, it might be good to build a case, you know, to help sort of homogenize these programs so you can easily get somebody from Carrie's organization over to do the literacy training you need, and she can get somebody over to do the management and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? All right, we need to open the meeting up for public comment. Hearing none, we'll close the opportunity for public comment. Thank you. I think we can adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time, energy, and brain power. It's really a pleasure to see you. I hope our next meeting is December 17th. I hope we're in person. The Brady Bunch thing is wearing on me. I want to see you guys in person. So hopefully we'll do so. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Great meeting. Great meeting.
All right, thank you.